hear it calling every single hour.
Welcome everyone. I'm Claire, one of the volunteers at Southsea Sangha, and we have joining us Sebene, Selassiee from New York. I will hand over to her shortly. I just wanted to do a few introductions before I do that. So a very warm welcome to you all and any newcomers that are joining us this evening. I hope you're all well. I'm deeply grateful to be joining this evening and to have the support of this community. This week for me has been a bit of a turbulent one, so I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So being able to share this practice with you all, I am deeply grateful for. So now that, you know, it's great that we have this way that we can be together, even though we're not in a room together. It's a way for us all to connect in. So thank you for being here. Tonight's session is going to be an hour and a half. And so that will give us time to do a meditation, a talk, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. And so if you do have a question at any point, if you pop it on, press the ask a question button at the bottom of the screen, and then you can post any questions at any point throughout the evening to be answered later on. And also, before we start, I just wanted to go through, I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which I've not done before. Oh, and now I can't find the button for that. So I won't be doing that. We're going to start sharing the guidelines that we use for our Tuesday evening sessions, just as a way to make sure that we have some sort of ideas of how we can be together. Things have not been going to plan today, so I'm feeling a little ungrounded at the moment, so bear with me. I'm just going to post the link to the guidelines in the chat. So use the chat to chat to each other. So the guidelines, so agreements for group interactions at Southsea Sangha. So try it on, be willing to try on new ideas or ways of doing things that might not be what you prefer or are familiar with. Practice self-focus. So when you are using the chat, speaking about and from your own experiences and attend to your own responses. Do not speak for a whole group or express assumptions about the experience of others. And then the next one is about intent and impact and understanding the difference. So trying to understand and acknowledge impact. Denying the impact of something said by focusing on intent is often more destructive than the initial interaction. When you are communicating, substitute but for and or both. This practice acknowledges and honours multiple realities and truths. Refrain from naming or shaming yourself and others. Practice giving skillful feedback and watch your own tendency to move into positions of power under or over with others. Practice self-love. Encourage full participation by all present. Take note of who is speaking and who is not. If you tend to speak often, consider moving back and take up less space. And if you find yourself speaking less, move up, try taking up more space. Try to avoid planning what you'll communicate as you listen to others, and try to avoid inner comparison or commentary. Try actually listening. Listen with an open will. Be willing to be surprised, to learn something new, to change your mind. Listen with your whole self. Confidentiality. Take home what you learn, but not the identity of those who shared it now or later. And if you do want to follow up with anyone regarding something they have communicated in the session, ask first and respect their wishes. And you can always Yeah, so I've sent I've put a link to the guidelines in the chat bar. And lastly, but very important, is to mention Dana. These sessions are offered freely. We want this to be a very inclusive space so that you can access the support that's on offer. And we can't do this without the support of those that are able to offer it. So if you feel supported and would like to continue to support us and the teacher to enable us to continue this amazing work, then please offer what you can by pressing the Dana or donation button at the bottom. There's also a link to our PayPal account and bank account details I'll post in the chat. If you are able to offer anything, it will be gratefully received. Thank you very much in advance for what you can offer. So I will go into the background now and hand over to you. Thank you for joining us this evening all the way from New York. Thank you, and I'll see you shortly.
Thank you so much, Claire, for all your support and help. And we had some tech glitches earlier, so thank you for handling that so gracefully. And thank you all for being here. I was telling Claire, I just sort of assumed we would be on Zoom because, I feel like I live on Zoom now. Which some of you might know too. So I was expecting to see little boxes and faces. So I'm really sad that I can't see you, but so appreciative that you're here with me and that we can be here together. One of the things I do like about seeing folks is that sort of feeling of a relational experience, which is much harder, obviously, if you're only looking at me, not each other. So I really want to encourage you to use the chat as a way to for us to stay connected to each other as a group, even if we don't feel that visually through this particular technology or interface. And, I might be asking some questions from time to time, and feel free to type stuff in. I was also sharing with Claire that I have, since COVID, I've been experiencing fitful sleeping and some insomnia, I guess. And I say I guess because sleeping has always been one of my major talents. I never had sleep issues until just a few months ago, and it's quite discombobulating. I really have so much empathy for people who struggle with this often. I've always been a very sound sleeper, no problem getting to sleep. And so last night was one of those nights. It was actually 2 nights in a row. So I feel a little bit not quite ungrounded, but just a little less kind of online, which could be good because I'm talking about mystery. And, we tend to live in our left brain, very rational minds a lot in this culture, and so maybe it's good if I'm sort of going with my intuition today. So I want to begin, as I always begin my teachings, with an honoring of native land. So I imagine many of you are in Southsea, which I was Googling today and looking at some pictures just to imagine where you are. If you're calling in from somewhere else, please feel free to drop that in the chat. But for those of us who are in settler colonial states, where the indigenous peoples and cultures were brutally removed and often murdered or genocided, there has been a request from indigenous folks all over the world to always honor native land by starting ceremonies, starting meetings, starting gatherings with a naming of where we are. So I meet you today from this unceded Lenape territory in what's now called Brooklyn, New York. And the Lenape peoples stewarded this land of lower New York, Delaware, Pennsylvania for thousands of years, really beautifully And actually, even the word Manhattan is a Lenape word, and it means good wood. Is one of its meanings, and it describes a grove that was in Lower Manhattan, where Wall Street is now, where cedar was grown, and that wood was known for making bows. So it's actually good wood of bows. So it really speaks to the language, and the culture speaks to that connection to nature, connection to the earth, that I think is really at the heart of mystery. I also always begin by acknowledging that these teachings come from a very particular tradition. So I'm in a lineage that goes back to Ajahn Chah through my teachers, Thanissaro and Kittisaro, and a number of other teachers I've learned from, primarily from Southeast Asia. And I know Southsea Sangha is part of that Theravadan lineage and tradition. I also, through Thanissaro and Kittisaro, I'm connected to a Chan lineage of Master Hua and the Kuan Yin teachings, and just really to honor those lineages, as this land holds history and memory. These teachings hold history and memory of many thousands of years that were stewarded by folks so that we could benefit today. Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Hi, Luco. Nice to get some chats and some feeling of where you are. Sarah's in Hampshire. No beach here. Lots of trees, they say. Oh, by the way, my pronouns are she, her. And, you know, thank you for saying that, Danny. Yeah, and thank you for thanking me for coming on little sleep. We'll see how that goes for you all. But I really like to begin in this way, and taking time and naming and honoring. And even in naming, you know, it's really holding a certain quality of faith or power, that in expressing gratitude, there's some sort of energetic exchange. And, you know, I think there's been so much emphasis, which has been really helpful to bring people to practice, on kind of the rational, scientific, logical, provable benefits of these practice and of these teachings. But we're always in little ways pointing to these mysteries that are also just inherent in these teachings. My friend Greg, who's a Zen teacher, he said to me once, you know, there's only two things: concepts and mystery. And in this culture, we rely so heavily on the concepts, and you know, we have to almost relearn the mystery, relearn that intuitive way of being. And that's what this practice of meditation is bringing us into, if we really allow it. So I'll explore some of that in some of these poems and things that I have around to share with you. But want to begin with a practice of really just allowing ourselves to arrive here in our fullness, with all that's going on in the world and how that's impacting us, using this time as really a space and a way to rest, regather ourselves, ground ourselves, nourish ourselves. I'll do some light guidance leading us in. I'm going to drop a little bit of the mindfulness of elements practice in there, because I find that's one way to really connect to this nature of mystery, that we are connected to everything around us. This classical practice of mindfulness of elements, that's actually rarely taught in kind of contemporary mindfulness, but is really, really rich. So we'll share that. And then I'll share a little bit, and then really want to leave a lot of time for questions and interaction. So, inviting you to take a comfortable posture. Really, you know, the cameras are off. We're not in a particular space. I really want to encourage you to get comfortable. I do most of my formal practice lying down, and find that that's just such a supportive way of allowing the body to rest. So encouraging you to find a posture lying down, standing, or sitting that feels restful, that allows you to be attentive, but to really relax the body and mind and heart. So whatever that is for you, just checking to make sure that you feel grounded. So you feel that support of the floor underneath your feet or seat or back. That you also feel open in the front of the body. So if you're sitting, you might want to roll your shoulders up and back. Feel that sense of openness across the chest. So there's no tightness or constriction in the breath. I'll just mention I live in Brooklyn, so you might hear some sounds behind me, and you can just have that be part of your meditation. Just allowing yourself to go inwards, leaving the screen, the images, and that connection to technology out for the moment, just allowing the sound of my voice and this invitation to go within. And already you might notice thoughts, emotions, sensations, sounds, just allowing it all to be there for a few moments. Just noticing what's here. I'm inviting you to practice in whatever ways are meaningful for you. And if you'd like some guidance, invite you to connect with the body as a place and a way to center and gather your awareness. Perhaps connecting with that groundedness, the feet on the floor, really sensing the seat in the chair or the back against the ground, feeling that contact. Perhaps noticing the difference between thinking about sensation and actually allowing oneself to feel sensation. Becoming intimate with the changing nature of body, vibration, pressure, tingling, just noticing moment to moment whatever is happening. And reminding oneself that thoughts may arise, stories may entangle us, and that's not a mistake or a problem. That's part of the process. But the body can be this ballast, this anchor. And spending a few minutes of our practice feeling these elements as part of the body. So feeling that groundedness, that contact as the earth element, sensing the density and the weight of the body, the flesh, the fat, the bones. that earth element in us, connected to the earth element all around us. We are earth. We speak of earth as something separate from us. We are earth. Allowing that density to continue to ground and settle us. As we feel the fire element warmth in the belly or the chest, feeling the temperature of the body as this energizing force. This transformative power epitomized by the sun. We could not survive without this fire element. The warmth that allows us to be and breathe. We depend on this fire element to stay alive. And this balanced by the water element, all that is fluid and flowing in the body. Perhaps you can sense this in the moistness in the eyes or the saliva in the mouth, the blood coursing through the body. Feeling that fluid flowing nature that is actually most of our being. We are majority water, as is this earth. This water in us connected to the oceans and the seas, the rivers, the springs, the clouds, the rain, the snow, the dew, the fog. Water is life. Water is everywhere. And this water element held inside this element of air that we can experience as the breath entering and leaving the body moment after moment for as long as we're alive. This element that is changing and mutable, ephemeral, light, and that connects us to all of nature. Oxygen traveling throughout the hemispheres over a course of a year. Oxygen generated by plants, the ocean, the algae, even the sun and the stars. So we breathe each other in and out and breathe all of life, moment after moment. Staying here with the breath, the body, with your experience as we practice in silence. again, in any moment, reminding oneself that this practice is not about what's happening. So we may be lost in thought or caught in a story. That's not a problem. It's not what's happening that's important. It's our relationship to it. And so we enter into this process of noticing, remembering, regathering our awareness on the body, on the breath, in this moment. So we're not trying to get somewhere else, but really opening to presence right here and now. This is a poem from Marie Howe called Singularity. Do you sometimes want to wake up to the singularity we once were? So compact, nobody needed a bed or food or money. Nobody hiding in the school bathroom or home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Remember? There was no nature, no them, no test to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. Would that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean, and before that, to when sky was earth, and animal was energy, and rock was liquid, and stars were space, and space was not at all, nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important, before this awful loneliness, can molecules recall it? What once was, before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun, only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is, 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 all, everything home. So I invite you to stretch the body, to reconnect to being together in this way, perhaps coming back to your screen or simply listening. It's really wonderful to practice again today. And I chose this subject of mystery a few months ago when Daniel reached out to me. And, I wondered in the past couple of weeks as things have been really intensifying here with the Black Lives Matter movement and all that it's been revealing and catalyzing, if mystery would feel almost like a bypass. Not that it isn't always there, but did it feel, and I had to really explore this myself, like not quite what we should be exploring in this moment. So for those of you who might not know the term bypass or spiritual bypass, it's often been used to describe the way we can use practice to kind of repress or ignore difficult emotional, personal patterns. So let's say using the idea of letting go to not deal with unresolved anger or trauma, emotions or personal conditioning. And, you know, sometimes we can use practice to bypass what's happening around us, relationally, socially, culturally. So did this feel like a bypass? When I was listening to a conversation that Wesley Morris and Jenna Wortham were having, two Black New York Times culture writers. And Wesley Morris talked about how this moment just feels so cosmic. And maybe many of you felt that too, first with COVID. It's kind of the intensity of what's happening. It feels so much larger than what we're used to, maybe, especially those of us who haven't lived through sort of cataclysmic cultural or social events. Some of us may come from, you know, countries that have experienced a lot of war or upheaval. But I think for many of us that might live in the US or Canada or the UK, Europe, you know, who didn't live through the world wars, this might be our war in that sense of this defining moment. So Wesley Morris was talking about that cosmic nature, and he said that particularly this moment around race in America and now around the world, he said he felt it was like someone sent up a signal for help 400 years ago, and it's just being picked up now. Like someone picked up the phone on the other end. And I love that image and that idea, because it really speaks to what practice shows us too, that these concepts we have of time, of ourselves, of the nature of reality are just so limited. They're not wrong, but they can't explain it all. You know, our scientific, materialist, Western way of seeing things really limits our capacity to enter into this dharma of mystery. So I decided actually mystery would be a perfect topic to kind of tend to these times with that bigger holding, not to bypass what's happening, not to not feel the impact of it. Many of us are feeling rage or grief or confusion, frustration, and also hope and encouragement and possibility and power. And so it's up to each of us to know when we lean into our activism, our activity, our dealing with the material reality, and when we can rest in the power of a larger knowing. I love images of Black Lives Matter movements where there's ceremony brought in. And there's that famous image of a Black person, looked like a woman to me. She was wearing a skirt, or they were wearing a skirt, saging a group of police officers in riot gear that came from the Ferguson demonstrations years ago now. But bringing in this, what is indigenous wisdom, and this knowing of the vastness of reality and possibility, and beginning to build our faith and our trust in more than just the material and the rational. It's going to be really hard. You know, I was raised in a very Marxist household where, you know, the answers were all very logical and very practical, action-oriented movement to change the world. But, you know, maybe the signals we're sending up now are being answered in the past. And how do we learn to really open to that trust of our right response to these moments? So, you know, I want to talk about kind of the mystery and the Dharma and why we don't allow it sometimes. I know for myself, I came to Buddhist studies academically. And I tend to have that conceptual academic leaning in myself. And it's not that concepts are bad and mystery is good. We're not forcing them to argue with each other or fight each other. They're both true. The only two things, as my friend Greg said, are concepts and mystery. But which one do we lean towards? You know, which one do we trust? Which one do we lift up? Which one do we employ in our own lives? Albert Einstein said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." And the rational mind, even in our Dharma study and practice, is so often held up. It's the one that can show us the way, that can prove to us that this practice is useful. You know, it really plays into this practice as personal improvement project. That the intuitive mind is the gift. And I feel that I've opened to this more and more over the years in my own practice. And I continually have to remind myself and remember, because the culture is so strong in the other way, my conditioning is so strong in the other way, that I have to almost relearn it in my bones. You know, when I first started practicing the formal practice of the elements, I was on retreat with Venerable Analia and Joseph Goldstein some years ago, and Analia was who's a Theravadan monk from Germany. He had us do that practice multiple times, and I'd done it before, but never so regularly. And since then, it's become a big part of my practice, and a big question for me. You know, why this practice that is right there in the Satipatthana Sutta, in the teachings on mindfulness, in the first foundation, in the foundation of the body, which we've so adopted. You know, the mindfulness of breath, the mindfulness of the body, but mindfulness of elements, not as much. And why? Like, what does that say about us, our incapacity to really feel that somewhat mysterious connection with nature? This acknowledgement in that practice that this earth element is within us as it is out there, this fire element, this water element, this air element. And this practice of the elements spanning across the globe, every continent, ancient Egypt, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, indigenous teachings, African teachings, all of them have practices that involve the elements. You know, this simple metaphor for really feeling how interconnected we are with everything. So, you know, for me, that leaning on the conceptual mind, it's sometimes helpful for me to learn things that way first, then feel my way in. And I challenge myself to try and feel my way in and have that be supported by learning. So this mindfulness of the elements has been that for me. Like, how do I feel my way in? Trust that I can feel earth. Trust that I can feel fire. Trust that I can feel water and air. But I'd like to share with you some other ways into the mystery, some scientific facts to explore, to support our exploration. So here are just a few. So 14 billion years ago, all the space, all the matter, all the energy of our known universe was all contained in a volume 1/1,000,000th the size of the period that ends this sentence here. And this is not gigantic font. 1/1,000,000th the size of that period. Everything in our known universe was inside basically nothing. And every single atom in your body around you can be traced to that teeny, tiny, teeny, inconceivable pinpoint. And all the cells that comprise your body are made of atoms, and most of an atom is space. The size of an atomic nucleus, where the matter of an atom is, compared to a whole atom, is similar to a grain of rice inside a football stadium. So that's how much space is around an atom. But if you took the nuclei, most of the matter of all your body, and put it side by side, all the nuclei, there would be a speck of dust. So we're mostly space. It's so hard to actually conceptually understand this, which is why it's so hard to apply our teachings the same way we do to neuroscience, measuring the effects of meditation on the mind, on the body. These things are not measurable within us. So 95% of the universe is made up of mysterious forces of dark energy and dark matter, and that's unknowable to us. So it's only 5% of the universe that is really known to us. Thus 95% is, it's not just that it's space, it's unfathomable to us. If that's not mystery, I don't know what is. Not to mention, all of what Einstein showed us over 100 years ago. And we still can't really rationally, conceptually grok it, that time is an illusion, that space and time and distances are relative. But even hearing that, we can begin to maybe start to feel how it's possible that prayers from hundreds of years ago from enslaved peoples who are witnessing the greatest horror that any of us could imagine, if we can't even imagine how terrible and world-ending that must have felt and seemed, that those prayers are being answered now in this movement and this attention, that we can never know. And the Buddha said, all the causes and conditions that lead to a moment. The karma is not something we can logically understand one after another, but there are innumerable, unfathomable amounts of causes and conditions that lead to any moment. And can this exploration and understanding begin to support our faith, our capacities? When we feel overwhelmed and overrun, yes, we give ourselves time to rest, and this practice can be one of rejuvenation. But that this trust in something, maybe we could call it bigger, but I'm not sure if it's even about bigger, but much more mysterious than maybe our rational way of thinking can understand. And that if we listen to the wisdom of the ancients, the wisdom of the wise and compassionate guides and leaders around us, and let's not listen with a blind faith, that there can be some discretion, there can be questioning, there can be dialogue and conversation. but that it begins to build our faith to know that there's more here and that there's more possible. And sometimes I lovingly critique our Western insight tradition for being maybe one of the expressions of modern Buddhism, particularly convert Buddhism, that is the least connected sometimes to this mystery. It birthed the modern mindfulness movement and a lot of these studies, and that's wonderful and opens the door for so many to the practice. And then sometimes that can also limit our capacity to speak freely about these possibilities, about the mystery, for fear that we'll be labeled too woo-woo or out there. I found these jokes about the different traditions. Where did I put them? So, how many Theravada Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? 3. 1 to check the suttas, 1 to check the Vinaya, 1 to check the Abhidhamma. How many Nichiren Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. How many Vipassana Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? None. Just practice noting darkness, darkness, darkness. How many Zen Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? River flowing, mountain standing, only the way illuminates. That's always my favorite one. How many Chan Buddhists does it take to change a light bulb? 1 can offer the light bulb up to Kuan Yin, the great bodhisattva of compassion. So I'm hoping you all laughed. I can't tell. And that's poking a little fun at, just the different ways the Dharma expresses itself. But to also highlight that, again, in some of the modern manifestations, and this is not talking about Theravada as a whole, there's a lot of mystery and magic. For those of us who practiced in Southeast Asia, may have come into contact with that. But the last joke about Chan Buddhism, I practice also in this Chan tradition. Those devotional practices can be one way to open up to mystery. And I'll be really honest, for me, that's not been always comfortable or easy to explore that. It's sometimes felt like someone else's clothing I put on. There's feelings of cultural appropriation that can come up around it. But the expression of it is this opening of the heart to really this power of connecting to forces that are bigger than me, that are mysterious, that are profound, and finding my ways into that, which can come from my own experience and my own culture too. I have ancestor altars all around my apartment with my mom and grandparents and others who've gone before, my partner's mother and family. Often lighting candles and making offerings to the many altars. And we have at least one in each room. Those can be little ways in. It might be connecting with nature, realizing the power in an ancient tree or an ancient grove, connecting with the mystery of the ocean. for each of us, it'll be a different way, and would love to open it up soon to hear some of what you all have to say or express or ask about mystery in your own practice, in your own lives. But really, this is an invitation to trust and to faith, to question and to be in conversation about this possibility. So I think I'll leave it there, since we have about 20 minutes and I want to make sure to leave plenty of time for feedback, and let Claire come back in and tell me what I need to do that. Oh, Claire, it looks like you're muted. There's a muted symbol. I don't know if we're having this issue again. Oh, okay. So Claire's saying that her sound is not working, but if you have a question, please feel free to... Oh, here, I see one. Okay, understand now. So from Jackie, relearning intuition in your bones really resonated with me. What have you found that helps you to do this? Well, Jackie, your question resonates with me because it's an ongoing process for me. You know, it's like I mentioned, I felt a particular opening with Venerable Nalio teaching the mindfulness of the elements practice. And I would say kind of the faith that I've brought to a devotional practice with my teachers, so this Kuan Yin practice of chanting, bowing, ceremony. Sometimes I really feel like I'm going through the motions with that. Really helped with doing those practices, because feeling other people's presence and the energy of other people's voices and bodies has really helped. But both of those have been not comfortable practices for me at the beginning, because I was so used to my mindfulness practice being a particular way, you know, and I think what I wasn't aware of how I was attached to how mindfulness practice as I had been doing it, which was mostly breath meditation, body scans, working with thoughts and emotions using basic mindfulness, that those were very stilling practices and brought a certain comfort. You know, you can get kind of attached to the states that those bring you to. But there wasn't an embodiedness to them. And so these embodied practices of really exploring how to sense earth, how to sense fire, how to sense water, what does that mean? And doing it just over and over again, listening to some guided meditations, rereading the sutta, and exploring what I could from there, and then just practicing over and over again. And also with the chanting and bowing, really embodying those experiences and allowing them to open me to something without necessarily an agenda of what that should be. So just trying it and finding your way in. And then outside of formal practice, the things that allow us to open ourselves up to a listening that's deeper than just our cognitive spin. And usually for me, that requires more solitude and silence, being in nature, and that can be going to, you know, a park nearby. But especially if I can have extended periods in nature, that also opens up that listening possibility. So thank you for the question, Jackie. If you have any follow-up, please feel free. And also would love to hear from other folks. You know, what has your experience been with mystery? Are you challenged by this? Is it not new to you at all? Something that you've explored for a long time? Yeah, just really would love to hear from folks. So I think this is coming from Claire. I noticed particularly recently feeling easily overwhelmed and disconnected at times. I look after my young daughter a lot and have little time to myself at the moment. What ways help you support you to reconnect with yourself and your intuition? I mean, you know, if parents, especially of young children, don't get medals, all of you, after this period when we were really not paying attention. I don't have kids myself, and I'm really just amazed and honor folks who are navigating this also while helping kids navigate this. It's a lot. And, you know, I just can't say enough how much I appreciate that is a practice unto itself, and finding the ways that practice can be inserted into that rather than feeling like you're behind in some way because you can't carve out practice time for yourself. I think it's just so important. I've seen a lot of people when I'm at the park or around spending much more time outdoors with their kids and having that possibility. And, you know, that's a kind of connecting to intuition, just be able to have feet on the earth and to be out in the air and with the trees and with nature, with children, helps us all ground, right? And I know from my godson, my nephew, a couple of other kids who I'm in relationship with, that some of them are really not wanting to go out. Like my godson, his brother wants to go out all the time, but he's about 9 now, and he does not want to go out. And it's been a real challenge for his parents, especially for his mom, of how to kind of honor, you know, his fragility in this, and their own needs, you know, to do certain things, and to really be gentle with all of us, with each other. And that doesn't mean that we don't get mad or angry or frustrated or feel really all over the place, but to realize that everyone is feeling this differently. You know, I'm quite aware that my sleeplessness has something to do with what's happening. Particularly sensitive, and you know, I think I'm picking up a lot, and for whatever reason in this moment, not able to discharge it, and been doing things like breath work and movement to try and move some of this energy, but we're all picking up on so much at this moment, and it is a big cosmic moment. So to be really gentle with ourselves. Thank you, Claire. I would love to hear, you know, maybe just even one more person. It doesn't have to be a question. It could be just a sharing of, you know, how does this land for you? Oh, Sarah says they were forest bathing today. Yeah, I love that term. I think it comes from Japan. But it's so powerful. And, for some of us who live in very urbanized places, that connection with nature might come through our house plants or our food, through the sky, our kind of most expansive, every moment connection to nature, just right above us. And sometimes we think we have to go to these pristine places to feel that we are part of nature, but we're part of nature even right here in a dirty sidewalk or a busy road. Sometimes I bring the elements practice into my day-to-day. So if I'm taking a shower, I reflect on water. Or if I'm heating some tea up, I reflect on fire. And of course, the breath is air in any moment. But to really allow the floor underneath your feet to be the earth element when you need to be more grounded. Allow the density of your bones to remember that. So this element practice can also be part of our rebalancing, reconnecting to nature in any moment. Yeah, thank you, Claire. The more I practice, the more mystery I find is everywhere. It's so true. I think that days that we're in for most of our lives is because of school. From the time we're little, it's ground into us to stay still, to learn conceptually, to understand things only with our minds, and then we get tested on it, tested on it, tested on it. We spend the first quarter of our lives just learning in a conceptual way all the time. Joe writes that they're from a Catholic background, so mystery has been woven into my bones. Oh, so beautiful. Yes, poor Protestants. I think in some ways, I come from Ethiopia, and we have Orthodox Christian expression, very, very ancient, and so it has some similarities with Catholicism. And there's a way in which, the Protestant Reformation was so pure in its intentions of what it was trying to correct. And there was so much baby. No, I know you didn't mean it like that, Joe. No. I'm saying it like that. Sorry, I know that those divisions run deep in your aisles. So sorry to foment any divisions. No, I meant it more like what we throw out. And this is true of kind of our Enlightenment project in general. The scientific materialist agenda really made what is non-rational suspect, and also because it's often been associated with women and the feminine, that we really, again, as Einstein said, lost this power of the intuition and making it a servant of the rational. So sorry to misconstrue your words, Joe. That was completely my interpretation, and coming also from my own background. So unless there are any more questions, I just want to mention before we go that this exploration of mystery, especially when it involves nature, can sometimes lead us to look outside. So this elements practice and practices that are really embodied help us to really remember that ultimately we experience the mystery right here. You know, there's nowhere else. It's not out there. Even if we witness it or feel it around us, our actual exploration of mystery is in our own hearts. So I just want to end with a poem from The First Free Women. If any of you don't know this, it's a wonderful, wonderful new translation of the Therigatha, the poems from the early Buddhist nuns, the enlightened women, the early teachings. And this translation is by Maddie Weingast, and it's a really beautiful, beautiful translation. So this one is from another Tissa. And she writes, "Find your true home on the path. Find the path right here in the center of your own heart. If you keep searching the past and searching in the future, you will search and search, but your searching will never end." So all time is right here. All space is right here, right in the center of our own hearts. And from my heart, I just want to say thank you for your time and your attention, for your questions and for your energy. We can share this fruition of our practice amongst ourselves, and I also invite us to offer it up for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere, without exception, find true freedom in their hearts. Thank you.